One thing that I noticed right away with these answer choices for this first transition question is that 2 of them fit the same category. Remember, there are 4 transition categories, and most of our transition words will fit into those 4. So there's but, and, so, and for example. And in this case, both regardless and on the contrary are basically fancy ways of saying but. They're going to make a contrast, right? So contrary, contrast, and regardless is basically doing the same thing. So the fact that those 2 words are in the exact same category means that they're both probably wrong, because if they mean the same thing, how could one be correct and the other incorrect? That doesn't make any sense. They have the same basic definition. So there are some rare examples where that doesn't quite work, but especially on the easy module, yeah, just follow that strategy and you should at least be able to get down to 2 answer choices. And the reason that's so helpful here is I think both of these other words don't really fit one of our categories. In fact, this is kind of its own weird thing. Lastly, we probably know is going to be, all right, part of some sort of sequence. First you do this, then you do that, lastly you do this. So let's see, do we have a sequence here or not? Tyrian purple was a highly prized dye among the Phoenicians, an ancient civilization located in present-day Lebanon. The Phoenicians were famous for using this natural dye to color their clothes a distinctive purple. The name Phoenicia itself, some historians claim, may have originally meant land of purple. Well, there's no contrast, so that kind of like re-emphasizes what I said before of just like, yeah, there's no, we didn't think there'd be a contrast because of the answer choices. Here, they're just saying that they have this purple dye and they're named for the color purple, so that doesn't seem like a contrast. That seems like, yeah, like the purple's important here. Now, it's not a lastly because where's the firstly, right? This isn't a sequence of things. These are just kind of random facts. And this answer, in fact, basically is a way of kind of just adding emphasis to something and almost saying that it's like surprising or very interesting. And that's kind of what this is doing here, right? They're saying in this sentence here, the Phoenicians were famous for using this natural dye to color their clothes a distinctive purple. So this civilization used a particular dye. Interestingly, amazingly, surprisingly, the name Phoenicia itself may have originally meant land of purple. Right? That's an interesting fact, right? This whole civilization is named for the color that they made their clothes. That's an interesting fact. So in fact is a way of kind of showing that. And sometimes it's more of like a surprise. It's more of just like, this is interesting. It's more for emphasis. It has a wide variety of uses. But very often on the SAT, when we pick that answer choice as the correct answer, it's not because it's obviously correct. It's because everything else is obviously wrong. And I think that's exactly what's happening here and why those categories can really help us, because it can maybe knock out 2 answers right away that we might otherwise consider because, in fact, is such a weird word that doesn't really fit a category. The only other word I think that is worth mentioning that is in that same category is, in fact, is the word indeed. That's a word we don't really use. We're not from like the 1940s. That's a very old-timey word. But like many of our transition words, it has a more simple meaning. It basically means this idea of like, in fact, or surprisingly, adding emphasis. And so again, we typically end up picking that answer just because it feels right. It's almost always going to be a process of elimination situation where everything else is provably wrong. And that is a perfectly valid way to get these transition questions right. Just use the knowledge that you have, and sometimes you're going to have an answer left over, and that's okay. Just pick it and move on.